Today's episode is brought to us by CS Instant Coffee, the best coffee for any adventure you're going to go on. Use the code ADVENTURE at csinstant.coffee and get 50% off through September and October. So give it a shot. And we're also brought to you by Roam Products. They make elastic knit, minimalist style wallets with all sorts of designs. Get 20% off the perfect minimalist wallet for all your adventures. It'll hold everything you need by going to wheredouroam, ROAM.com, and use the code podcast with a capital P at checkout.
I just love that feeling of, you've got a course, whatever it is, it's you and your equipment, and here's your time, and go. There's no support vehicles, all the hoopla. It's very simple in that it's just you and your skills and your gear and the route.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, trying to help you find adventure every day in any stage of life. You're going to hear from explorers, adventurers, business owners, and anyone living their life a little more out of the box than usual. So if you're a listener to the show, you know bikepacking is kind of my background in bike touring as well. And we haven't had an episode. We've had some flying, some water-based stuff, and some running, some climbing, and I want to get some bikepacking in. So this is a throwback from February of 2017 with Jefe Branham, a legendary bikepacker, and he's going to talk to us today about the Colorado Trail Race. And Travis did this episode, so yeah, I hope you enjoy this Throwback Thursday episode, and have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.
All right, man, let's jump into it. So first, I alluded to you growing up in Connecticut. Let's talk a little bit about that and what made you transplant yourself to Gunnison, Colorado.
I would say I have a fairly normal background growing up in Connecticut. Wasn't really into all that much adventure. Never went camping. Was pretty straightforward. Enjoyed relatively normal sports like cross-country running and hockey and stuff like that. And then I had some friends actually who went to school at Western here in Gunnison, and were coming out for their sophomore year, and they couldn't shut up about how cool it was. So I knew I needed to get out of the East Coast. I knew I needed a change. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had never even been to Colorado before, but it pulled me in, and next thing I know, I packed up all I had and moved across the country, and I've been here ever since.
Wow, so you flew blind, just trusting some buddies, huh?
Yep, yeah, and it was, I was 19 years old, and I definitely didn't know what I was doing with myself. I knew that I really wasn't into I hate to say it with a blanket statement, but the materialism that is kind of dominant in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, that's kind of like, that's kind of how you prove yourself in Connecticut, is having more and nicer stuff than other people. And it never really appealed to me all that much. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself, but I knew that it was something else. And I would have to say that moving to Colorado definitely changed my life. Who knows what it would have been otherwise, but it took me a while to get used to it. But being here, especially in the Gunnison Valley, there's just so many amazing athletes, and you can't help but be inspired by all the things that people around here do. And it really just kind of opens your eyes to like, oh, whoa, I can go do that too. And that kind of where it all really began was actually with the Colorado Trail. And I started, I think it was back in like 94. I hiked the northern half of the Colorado Trail, and it was definitely a big switch in my life. And it just totally, everything from then on has been all about being outside and adventure and testing the limits and just being outside. Really, it really Colorado really just changed me for that way. It's just such a beautiful place. It really makes you appreciate being out there.
Yeah, I can relate. I moved out here from Connecticut as well, and the biggest impact on me, and I had come out here skiing with family prior to moving out here, but the biggest impact was just the open space that we have out here. I mean, you can see for miles. Yep. You stand on the plains, or on a mountaintop and just see the grandeur of the state. And back in the East Coast, it's really hard to see anything. Everything's sucked in, by trees and hills and often weather.
Yep.
And you get out here, and it's like, wow, there's a whole world out there in my backyard to go explore.
Yeah, and not only that, but just the amount of public land and access that we have here in Colorado as well.
Yeah.
Really, really kind of invites you to get out there and not just do a quick little trip, but like get out there and you can just keep going. And that's what I think is very inspiring for a lot of endurance athletes, is that it's not like you're just doing the same loop over and over again. You really can just go and go and go and see things, even if you have seen them before, see them in a different way, but you're more likely to see something you haven't seen before because there's so much ground. It really is just awe-inspiring, really.
Yeah, well, that leads perfectly into our topics of mountain biking, backpacking, and endurance racing. So let's jump in. I got a million things I want to talk to you about, and I'm afraid we're going to run out of some time.
Yeah.
So let's do it. So starting with mountain biking, how is it you ended up getting into it? It sounds like you didn't do a lot of it back in Connecticut, so something snapped.
The last couple of years I lived in Connecticut, we just started to mountain bike. That was probably 1990, maybe 89. We were, as kids, we were always riding our bikes in the woods, and usually it was just BMX bikes or crappy old 10 speeds. So we were always out in the woods, basically mountain biking, but on a bike that wasn't designed for it. And so even we were, teenagers, we saw these bikes and it was like, well, that's what we want, and let's face it, the bikes back then were just terrible, but they got us out there, and it definitely, I was definitely into mountain biking, even before I moved out here. The last couple of years I was in Connecticut, and it was definitely a little bit of a translation, moving out here, because back east, it's like, to me, single track back east was just like tight, rooty. You couldn't see the next turn. And then you come out here and it's just wide open space and just a different kind of style of riding.
Right.
But it definitely, it took me a couple years. Actually, in the first couple years I was out here, I did mountain bike, but then I kind of gave it up for a little while. I wasn't making enough money to really support keeping a mountain bike operable, and I wasn't patient enough to learn how to do it myself. And I actually gravitated into backpacking. And like I said, I hiked the Colorado Trail, and I did that probably for like 4 or 5 years. I was a pretty hardcore backpacker, and then I eventually drifted back into mountain biking because I wanted. Well, what happened was I was also a snowshoer when I was a backpacker, and then I picked up skiing, cross country and backcountry skiing, and that movement from just stomping along, never doing more than 3 miles an hour, to gliding and being able to fly down the downhills really opened my eyes to being able to cover more ground and having more of just a plodding experience, but having an experience being out there was a little bit more exciting. And that I basically transferred that by getting into mountain biking versus backpacking. And I immediately got into bikepacking because I was still into the camping and getting out there and spending more time than just a few hours out there. So it was just like that progression of finding that excitement as well as just being out there and soaking it all in.
Oh yeah, I can relate. I've ever since I started mountain biking, similar story back in Connecticut, started riding back there, and I don't remember what I had, some giant steel, hardtail, obviously back then, just heavy thing. But, from day one, I always thought, man, I would love to strap a pack on, and go a long distance on this thing, before bikepacking was ever a thing. And of course, my idea was that I'd carry everything on my back, and that would be brutal. Right. But, to find ourselves, in today's age and with all the bikepacking equipment available, it's something that you can do, like you said. You're not just plodding along at 3 miles an hour. You can actually cover some ground, but you're riding slow enough to actually witness and experience your surroundings, yet cover some distance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have found, that the bicycle is a great way to see things because you do, especially when you're climbing, which is most of the time, your head's up, you're able to look around. It's not like a cross-country race where your head's buried and you're looking at your front tire. You're able to look around and really see it all. But you get those little blurps of time where you feel like you're going kind of fast, and it definitely adds a level of excitement. And I think that excitement really makes it extremely addictive. and compelling, and it just makes it so you really want to get back out there and do it again.
Yeah, no doubt. Addictive is the word. Well,
yeah, for sure.
I want to dive into the Colorado Trail, but before we do, I mean, that's more self-serving. I want to know about it because obviously knowing the Colorado Trail for hiking, I've always known that, but not so much in the sense of bike packing it. So, but before we want to do that, I want to talk about a little race called the Tour Divide that you competed in and won in 2014. So tell me a little bit about that. What got you started up to ride the Tour Divide? That's a hellish race, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's definitely quite an experience. I mean, anytime you're trying to cover 2,700 miles and change, with mountain weather thrown in, is bound to be an adventure. But the Tour Divide is actually the race that captured my imagination, and got me into bikepack racing, to start with. I had heard about, it was actually originally called the Great Divide Race, I believe. And it didn't include the Canadian section. That was basically the difference, was just border to border. Mm-hmm. And I'd heard about that. I think it was 2004, was the first running of that race. And I, the internet wasn't super big on it. Like there wasn't a whole lot of information out there, but I remember catching some blurbs here and there, and it was just like, what? Like, what? Like, it just blew my mind that like, I think they averaged like 150, 155 miles a day back then. And it just blew my mind. Like, I honestly couldn't imagine doing it. Like, to me at that point, still riding 100 miles was daunting. And it just never left my head. And it really pulled me forward and made me try a lot of things in order to that, because I knew that I wanted to do that someday. But I would say that I was extremely afraid of it. I was scared of a lot of the situations that I would arise doing that. And I was just basically scared, and I didn't do it for years. And so what I did was I just did all these, smaller races to kind of train myself, to do the Tour Divide successfully. So I started with the Grand Loop, which is a little race, little loop outside of Grand Junction. And I also did the Arizona Trail Race and the Colorado Trail Race. And then eventually worked myself up to doing the Tour Divide for the first time in 2011. And then I did it again in 2014. And, I will have to say that it's one of those things where I think there's a lot of people who are interested in it and whose imagination is captured by it. And I just have to say, if you are captured by it, don't wait forever like I did. Go out there and do it, because it is it's hard, it's brutal, it'll make you cry, it'll make you want to go home, but it is an amazing experience. The first time I did it was just absolutely powerful, and it was just such an amazing time to be out there. And I mean, even though it hurt so much, I would not have traded it any minute I was out there for any other experience. It was just so fulfilling. And like I said, it was such a dream that I wanted to do for so long that it felt so good to be out there. And it was just, it's a cool experience. It's definitely different than doing these other races like the Colorado Trail Race, which are relatively short in time. You kind of get into the zone and then it's over. Whereas the Tour Divide, it really does feel more like a tour, because it feels like your lifestyle becomes basically riding your bike, finding food and water, finding shelter, and repeating it. And you're out there long enough that you really get into this groove. And it really just, it feels like it's your life, and it's a very fulfilling way to travel. And like we said before, you get to see some very, very rural and beautiful places, and it's just a really cool little slice of America that you really get to experience firsthand. And that you're there, you're riding in it every day. You're seeing the sunrises and the sunsets. You're sleeping in the dirt. You're seeing all the animals. You're just so in that zone that it's a very special experience. And like I said, if anybody out there is thinking about doing it, I'm not saying rush in there unprepared, but make it happen, because life's too short not to live your dreams, and it is a worthwhile dream for sure.
Yeah, right. Well, you make a good point, and we all know, many of us, we take a day hike or, an overnighter, or we, go on a short ride, whether it be a mountain bike or motorcycle or something. And it takes you a day or two just to get into that rhythm, that groove, like you said. But if you're out there for multiple days on end, you finally get over that kind of hump, after those first couple of days, and you finally do reach that groove, and that it transitions into a completely different adventure in that point.
Yep. It becomes, you're basically like, you're completely saturated by the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be both really, really, really wonderful. And, when it's not going well, it can be really painful too, because you are surrounded by nothing but more of that experience. It's not like you're going to like all of a sudden be back in your living room.
Yeah, right.
Like you're there, and you have to get to the next point at least before you could even think about bailing. But it really is just an amazing experience. Highly suggest it for sure.
So while we're still on the Tour Divide, share a story, good or bad, from one of your races.
From the Divide?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll tell you probably the most heartbreaking story of the Divide for me was it was 2014, and like we were talking about, it was my second run, and I'll be completely honest with you, I went out there going for the record. I wanted the record, and I wanted to win, and I trained really hard for it. I did so much preparation, and it definitely was my focus. And the start of the race, it was raining and snowing, and it rained and snowed, I think, for like 4.5 or 5 days, basically straight. And living in the mountains, you get your butt kicked pretty regularly if you're out there enough. And I've gotten my butt kicked more times than I can count. And I'll tell you, that 4.5 days was just brutal. I mean, it just decimated me. And like I said, I was really focused on the record. So despite the fact that the weather was terrible, conditions were not fast, I was still doing everything in my power to stay at record pace. So I was basically sleeping less to make it happen. And I was probably going close to 20 hours a day. And I was leaving Butte, Montana, and I actually bumped into Rob Leipenheimer, who runs the Sportsman up there. And he's normally his shop is right on the route, but they changed the route for 2014, so it didn't go by. And I was at a gas station in Butte, fueling up, and he happened to see my tracker, and he came out looking for me to make sure everything was okay. And we were talking for a few minutes, and he's like, there's a big storm coming in tonight. And I'm like, yeah, it's been raining and snowing the last 4.5 days. And he's like, well, there's a big storm coming. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm going, I'm going. Like, I'm not stopping. And so anyways, I take off, I leave Butte, and it just is just the nastiest night. And it starts snowing, and you go over this one, it's pretty legendary, even when it's dry. It's known as Fleecer Ridge. And there's a section of it where there's no trail, and then there's a section where you go basically straight fall line down the hillside, and it's marginally rideable even in dry conditions. And I got up there, and there was 6 inches of fresh snow, and it was just whiteout conditions, and it was snowing like crazy. And I basically blew apart going over Fleecer Ridge, and coming down the other side, I eventually got out of the snow, and it was just raining, and I was just frozen to the core. And I didn't have a tent. I just had a bivvy, and I knew that I couldn't bivvy out that night. I was soaking wet. There's no way I was going to get warm. My teeth were chattering, and I was basically forced to get a hotel room in Wise River, Montana, and take a shower and sleep in a warm bed just in order to get my body temperature back up. And in that moment, my shot at the record just evaporated, and as I tossed and turned in that hotel bed, as warm and comfortable as it was, all I could think about was the fact that I felt like I should have been out there in the rain and just sucking it up. And it was just really heartbreaking to basically have the dream that I had going into this basically taken away. And it was it still stings a little bit to this day, to be completely honest, because I don't know if I'll be able to get back out there for the Tour Divide again. And just how weather can just completely change what you have been planning for years. And like I said, it was definitely a heartbreaking moment for me.
Oh yeah, weather can make it a completely different different course. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you can't plan for it. You just simply have to go on the dates that everybody's going, and you just hope that it turns out. But yeah, that's a major bummer.
Yeah.
Well, that's what freaks me out about bike packing. I love the idea, and I haven't done it yet. I have a mountain bike, but I'm still trying to figure out how to get gear on it. It's a full suspension, which, chews up a lot of the inside of the frame where you can carry a lot of your gear. But the thing about bike packing is you're so limited on gear, and it just freaks me out. Like something like the Tour Divide, you can go through so many different temperature ranges and geological areas that how in the world do you prepare with gear for that? I mean, you're talking bivy. I mean, so you don't sleep well in a bivy. I mean, you're slightly protected from the elements, but this is not warm camping.
No, it's not. It's definitely different. Anytime you're, even backpacking, anytime you're carrying everything, it's always a compromise between comfort and weight, basically, or space, one of the two. So you're definitely compromising. And anytime you throw the word race into things, it changes things even more because you're so much more focused on speed, and at some level, weight has an effect on your speed. And so, I mean, if you saw my gear list for the Tour Divide in 2014, you'd probably laugh because I barely carried anything. I mean, and looking back, I probably should have carried a little bit more, but if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't carry that much more because it really does. All that weight slows you down when you're trying to do 200 miles a day. And it's, like it is a compromise, but and some of that is just, it's just experience and just being out there and learning how to stay warm and places to camp that keep you warmer and drier. Things like that can really boost your confidence. And they often say with anything ultralight, is you can't go ultralight unless you have the experience to go with it. You can go buy the lightest gear, but if you don't know how to use it and you're not being smart, you could very, very easily ruin your trip. So it's definitely, I did a lot of camping, a lot of backpacking, and a lot of bikepacking before I tried any of these things. So I would say experience has a huge part in making that a little less scary, for sure.
Yeah, go do it. Yeah. If you want to do the Tour Divide, go do it, but definitely get yourself set up mentally and with the correct gear, with the right training.
Well, there's a term called the sub 24. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
But it's basically just doing a sub 24-hour bikepacking trip. And depending on where you live, it's a fairly easy thing to pull off. Like living here in Gunnison, it's very easy to go like maybe 5 or 10 miles and find an amazing camp spot where you won't see anybody else. And so it's basically the idea is that you go to a familiar place, and that's not that far away, and but you leave town, you have all your gear, you go someplace and you set up your camp. And you have that experience. And every time you do that, it builds confidence and it builds experience, and it allows you to look at it differently and maybe look a little bit farther, a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. And it's baby steps, like there's a lot of people, believe it or not, who show up for the Tour Divide and it's the first bikepacking experience.
Really?
And that sounds insane, but it's not unusual.
Wow.
And so, but a lot of those people don't make it very far either. And so, I temper my advice to go out and do it with also the advice of being prepared for it too. And do those little trips, because the little trips are awesome. There's nothing wrong with little trips. Little trips are the foundation for the big trips, for sure. So yeah, a little bit of homework makes everything a lot better, for sure.
Yeah, well, they're not only good ways to get your gear straight and comfortable with it, but I imagine they're also confidence boosters at the same time as you take your baby steps up.
Yep.
Finally get to walking, then running, and then racing. It helps a ton.
Exactly.
It's not always possible to take a French press or a coffee maker out in the woods with you, but thankfully now you don't have to, because there is a great option in CS Instant Coffee. They make 100% Arabica instant coffee in compostable packaging. It's perfect for the outdoors or whenever you don't have the time to make a fresh pot. And right now, you can save 50% on your first order by going to csinstant.coffee and using the code ADVENTURE at checkout. One of my new favorite pieces of gear is actually my wallet, and that's because it's been inspired by Simplicity by Roam Products. It's a minimalist style wallet, holds my cash, my cards, holds it really tightly because it's elastic, and it's probably eliminated my wallet size down by 60 to 70%. They offer a variety of designs, from artistic to patterns, and they're machine washable if they get dirty. They come with a little carabiner so you can clip it to things like your keys or your lanyard. And they also offer a complete line of silicone rings with a variety of styles and colors. So if you're tired of carrying around a big bulky wallet, go to wheredoyouroam, ROAM.com, and use the code podcast with a capital P at checkout for 20% off.
All right, let's talk about the Colorado Trail then. Again, like I said, I've known plenty about the Colorado Trail and hiking it, but it wasn't until recently did I discover the actual Colorado Trail race. So this started back in 2007, correct?
Yep. 2007 was the inaugural. Yep,
2007, and it's nearly 500 miles. What I understand is it's gone through a few iterations since the birth of it in 2007, so I imagine the mileage has ranged a little bit. But you have ridden it, did I get it right, 8 times now?
Let's see, I think I finished it 7 times. I started it one other time and didn't finish.
Okay.
2011, I started it, and that was the same year I did the Tour Divide, and that was a bad idea.
That's a good excuse. I'll let you have that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I made it to Leadville, and it was before I got to Leadville, but I was like, I didn't have a lot of time, and I definitely was not going to be able to do it in the time I had. And going into Leadville, I was like, okay, this is not going to happen.
little too gung-ho that year.
Yeah, I was definitely way too gung-ho.
Right.
Yeah, right. Reality was a much different situation.
I'm sure. So let's go into what the trail is. Now, for those that don't know what the Colorado Trail is, maybe out of state, this is a trail that runs from essentially Littleton, which is southwest Denver, and runs out to Durango, which is in the southwest corner of the state. Like I said, it's roughly 500 miles. What kind of, is a loaded question, what kind of elevation gain are we talking here? I read it's pretty extreme.
I believe that they're saying it's between 60 and 70,000.
Yeah,
vertical.
70 is what I read.
Yeah, and I don't think my GPS clocked it last time I did it. So I can't verify that that's 100% true, but I've heard it from a few different sources, so I would say it's probably about right. And that's one thing that sets the Colorado Trail race apart from a lot of other bikepacking races. It's just there is a lot of up and down. And as anybody who's probably ridden in the mountains in Colorado can attest to you, there's rarely too much flat. You're pretty much going up or you're going down, and it's usually pretty steep and rough in between. And in the Colorado Trail, the race itself has changed quite a bit from the beginning. As more sections of trail have been basically built by the Colorado Trail Foundation, they have been slowly adopted by the race itself. So it's actually gotten a lot harder, and it's gotten longer over the years. The original course was actually quite a bit easier than the current course. The current course is definitely really, really, really hard. I would say it's the hardest course is the current course for sure.
Wow.
And they also reverse the direction every year now too. Last year we went Denver to Durango, and I believe this coming year will be Durango to Denver. It alternates every year now, which throws a curveball into things too. So
how does that? How do they compare going? I don't know if I want to say east to west, west to east, or north to south, but how does it compare between Denver to Durango and back?
It's still very much up for debate which way is quote unquote faster or easier. They both kind of have their own unique challenges as far as resupply. I would say the resupply is definitely a little different going in the different directions, and also. I think that you don't hit tree line going out of Denver for I think 70 miles or something like that. Whereas you hit tree line like 25 miles in going out of Durango. So you do a lot more climbing right off the bat, and you get kind of a good slap in the face really quickly going out of Durango. But yeah, either way, it's hard. I wouldn't say either direction is easy by any means, and I really couldn't tell you if one of them's easier than the other. They're both really, really tricky. And I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite either. I like it in both directions, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. And, it's how it's typically answered on the, any of the three AT, PCT, and CDT. It's, it's the same. You're either going to get the steep stuff out of the way off the bat, or you're going to warm up. But one way or another, you got to deal with it. And do you want to deal with it while you're exhausted, or do you want to get slapped in the face right away? I mean, I know living on the Front Range, every time I go mountain biking, I have to ride up. So it's my poor son is like, why are we always starting out our rides going up? I said, well, you live in the flatlands, you got to ride up
climb.
to get there.
You got to climb, no, for sure. And that's definitely the case. A lot of people say that going out of Durango, you do some of the hardest stuff when you're a little bit fresher. But like I said, I don't know if it really is any easier. It's just a kick in the pants either way.
Right. Well, here's what blows me away. I mean, we're talking, again, like I said, 500 miles, and the course records. I think we're under 4 days now, right? 3 days, 19 hours?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what Neil did it in this year, but he was definitely under 3 days. I want to say I can't remember the number, but yeah,
3:19:50.
Yep. And I did a shorter, easier course. I think it was 2012. I was the first one to go under 3 days. I did literally it was 3:23:42 or something like that. Like I couldn't have been any closer to under 4 days, and that was a significantly easier course. I really can't imagine going sub 4 days on the current course. It's 50 miles longer, and I think it's got 10,000 more verticals than the one I did it on. And so it's really impressive that they're still going under 4 days.
Man.
Could it be that part of me just doesn't want to go there anymore?
Right.
Just because it requires so little sleep, I should say. Not only you have to be going fast, but I think Neil was sleeping an hour a night when he set the record this year. And that's how I've done it in the past, is basically sleeping an hour a night. And it's kind of an interesting experience, but it's not necessarily a very pretty one. And I don't necessarily want to do that again.
No, I can't. I can imagine riding it. I want to ride it. I want to ride the trail in the 2 weeks or whatever it takes for a normal person like me to ride the trail. But I can't even imagine riding it with that little sleep at a nice pace, much less race the thing with an hour of sleep. That's got to be torture on your body.
It's pretty crazy. I won't deny it's a pretty crazy experience. Yeah. And honestly, the difference between doing like a 4.5 day CTR and a sub 4 day CTR is huge. That trying to trim that 12 hours off is just mind-blowingly difficult. I know that sounds kind of crazy to a lot of people, but for myself, the last 2 years I've done it. I think I was like 412 or something, and 415 the last 2 years, and there's definitely some very uncomfortable moments out there. But for me, it's not that hard to do a sub 5 day, but to do a sub 4 day is just brutal. I mean, the difference is insane. And it's just so much less sleep, so much more pushing your body, just that much harder. And it's very, very difficult. And yeah, honestly, I would say anything under 9 days is still damn respectful as far as a pace goes, because you're still pushing it really hard. You're still not sleeping a lot. You're still enduring a lot of crappy weather and really long days, and a lot of saddle time. So my hat's off to anybody who finishes the Colorado Trail, period. But if you're doing it under 9 days, you're a haunch.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to leave that up to you guys. I have dreams of riding it, but like I said, I'll take the 2 weeks or more, and I will probably end up having to do it in a couple different trips. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
in
mean,
all honesty.
life gets in the way of things like stuff like that. No, and coming from somebody who is into the speed aspect, I think that doing it on a tour is an absolutely beautiful, wonderful endeavor. I think that racing has its place, but touring is definitely a great way to do things too. And I mean, I've done it enough times that I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by riding all night, missing, a lot of beautiful flowers and stuff like that, because I can still imagine in all the other times that I've been through those same sections. So I can kind of fill in the blanks even if it is dark. But, there's a lot of people who've said that, riding the Colorado Trail, any of it at night is just wrong. Basically that, like, missing any of that ground, missing seeing any of that ground is just wrong, because it's just such a beautiful trail. I mean, not the trail itself. The trail itself varies from beautiful to awful, but the terrain you go through is just really, really spectacular. And there's places on the Colorado Trail that, I haven't been everywhere, but I've been in a lot of places, and there are a few locations along the trail that are just the most beautiful places I've ever been. Just really, really, really pretty spots. And racing it, like, I can't tell you how many times you, like, go by a spot, like, that is the most perfect camp spot I've ever seen. And you're like, but I'm going to keep riding. Like, it's almost heartbreaking how many times you're like, wow, that is the most perfect spot. Or you do pass someone who is camped and they have their campfire going, and you're like, yeah. And you're like, no, I'm just going to keep riding to the night by myself, talking to myself, singing songs, going crazy, So there's definitely, I applaud people who go out there and just tour it. I think it's a spectacular way to see the trail, and not everybody should race. Racing is a great thing, but touring it is just spectacular, I think.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it someday. Well, I don't want to get off that topic without mentioning that you may have started 8 times, completed 7 times, but out of those you won it 4 times. That's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, I guess I have won it 4 times, haven't I?
That's pretty
right?
serious. I mean, I haven't really paid attention to how many entrants are in these things, but yeah, I mean, to win it 4 times, that's an impressive feat. So kudos to you, man.
Thanks. I mean, a lot of it is the fact that I've started 7 times, and like this year, I mean, the win. I mean, technically I won, but I don't really feel like I won the race this year. With Neil starting a day after us and going basically faster than everybody. I don't know if you know the story about this year's race, but
No.
Neil Belchenko started with everybody else and got about 30 miles in and laid his bike down on a switchback and broke his shifter paddle off. And so he ended up DNFing, going back to Denver, getting his bike fixed, and starting 24 hours after the field. And he passed everybody but me.
No kidding.
He was literally 22 hours faster than me, but because he started 24 hours behind me, he didn't get the official win. But in my mind, I mean, quote unquote, technically I won, but really in my mind, Neil definitely won the race. If he hadn't had that little mishap, he definitely would have been out there in front by far.
Right.
But yeah, technically I won. And I'm not, I think it's great, but I'm not like, rubbing that in anybody's face by any means.
No, you deserve it though, man. Take it.
Yeah.
Neil be back.
Yeah. And I'm not done with the race, but I doubt I'll be winning too anymore, just because those guys are just going so much faster and are willing to sacrifice a little bit more than I am at this point. But yeah, I mean, I love the Colorado Trail, and I'm going to race it as many times as I possibly can. I won't be able to do it this summer, but I'm hoping to be back the summer after for sure. And yeah, it's a different experience every time, and it's a powerful experience every time, and it's something that, and it's a fairly easy one for me to pull off because the logistics are fairly easy. I live halfway between the start and the finish, so it's only a 4-hour ride to the start or finish, depending on which direction it goes.
Mm-hmm.
I know the trail extremely well, so it doesn't require a lot of planning. And like I said, it's an experience that I really, really do enjoy, and it's different every time, and that's what kind of keeps me coming back. So I'll probably keep doing it.
Yeah. So when are you going to set out to tour it and not race it?
That's a good question. Me and my girlfriend have talked about it quite a bit. It's definitely tricky getting time off in the summer. So I would imagine we'll probably end up touring sections of it rather than doing the whole thing. Because like you said, it's definitely, getting 2 weeks off in the summer isn't that easy to pull off. But we've done little sections. We did section 23 this summer, and that was awesome. And if anybody's familiar with the trail at all, section 23 is a relatively new section. It's been only around for like 6 or 7 years, and it's all above tree line, and it is absolutely spectacular. And it's if anybody wants to do a day ride or a couple day trip, it's not an easy section. Like I said, it's above tree line. There's a lot of storm activity in that area, but it is absolutely magnificent. It's definitely one of my favorite sections of the trail. So, yeah, we'll probably just keep doing little sections here and there, and just kind of knocking off little bits.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, and I wanted to ask that. So if somebody wanted to ride some of it but not do the whole thing, is section 23, that's your recommendation of the one to do?
I mean, it's not the easiest section to do. It's probably got the shortest window as far as from being snow-free to getting snow again. It's not the section to do. I mean, there's a lot of sections of the Colorado Trail that are worth doing. There's only a few sections that are quote-unquote not worth doing, so to speak. But no, it's a great section. I would also say the section from Silverton to Durango or vice versa is spectacular. There's some really great sections off of Kenosha Pass and around Breckenridge. That's the thing. I mean, there are a lot of little bits of the Colorado Trail that I can close my eyes and I can picture, and it makes me smile for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't have to be any one section. And if you live in Colorado, just finding a section that's relatively close to home that you can work out the logistics for is good enough reason to do that section. They all have really, really cool bits to them. And I would suggest doing any one that kind of catches your imagination. They're all worth doing. Section 23 is just one of those sections that's like just so incredible, because it's like you feel like you're in Switzerland. When you're up there, you can't even see the valley floors in a lot of places. All you see are mountaintops. You can't see any towns. You can't see power lines. You can't see hardly anything except mountains. And it really is just awe-inspiring. Definitely recommend getting down there, but it's not an easy one to pull off either. But it's definitely just beautiful down there. But the prettiest section I would have to say is probably Mullis Pass to Durango. Mm-hmm. That and section 23 are probably the prettiest sections of the Colorado Trail for sure.
Oh, you can't find yourself lost in the San Juans and not open up your eyes to absolute beauty.
My gosh.
Probably the most, some of the most beautiful scenery in the world.
It's just magnificent down there. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
So you obviously have a lot of passion for this, and I love that. And that's what our show is about, is people that have passion for their adventure sport. So it begs the question, what do you get out of it? What is it that you get out of doing these races in this grueling, punishing weather? What does it do for you?
That's a good question. I would say that, the short answer is that it kind of makes me tick. I would say that like everyday life isn't necessarily easy for me, like getting up and going to work. I don't like get out of bed and be like, yeah, I'm going to work, like I definitely kind of drag myself through everyday life sometimes. It definitely kind of, weighs on me, and, the stresses of the world kind of get to me and stuff. And when I'm out there doing these things, it's like everything gets kind of boiled down and much more simple. And I think part of what really appeals to me about these races is they really are all about doing it yourself and being self-supported, and really being reliant on your own preparation, your own knowledge, and your own relationship with your equipment. And I really, really, really just feel so comfortable in those situations. Like I love being out there take a step back. I love looking at what I'm going to go do and preparing my gear and, making sure that I have the right insulation and the right sleeping and the right bags to carry it. And then when I have all that kind of wrapped up in a way that I feel is very ready to go, and then when I'm out there, I just have that very confidence-inspiring feeling, knowing that I've gone through all my gear, I know my gear, I've got what I need. And when I'm out there, I kind of feel like I really am, not in the sense of speed, but like I kind of feel like a turtle, whereas I have everything I need right on necessarily on my back. But me and my bike is all I need to get to the next spot where I can get food and water. And I just love that feeling of, you've got a course, whatever it is, point A to point B along this line, and it's you and your equipment, and here's your time, and go. And there's no support vehicles, there's no all the hoopla. It's just very simple in that it's just you and your skills and your gear and the route. And I really just feel really comfortable in those situations, and I feel really connected, and I feel a lot of power coming out of being out there and just absorbing the sunrises and the sunsets and just the vistas, and it really, really fuels my soul, I guess you could say. And it's not something that I find in anything else other than, I get that same feeling going for just a hike or a bike ride. But I really, really, really absorb it when I'm out there by myself, and really pushing myself, because it kind of strips away even more of that veneer of thought and worry and stress. And the longer you're out there, the more it strips away that kind of stuff, and the more you feel like just a human being out there in the woods. And it just really really boils it down and really makes you find the connections to things that are really important and really make you tick. And I've said before to other people is that when you're out there and you're not sleeping very much and you're doing 20 hours a day of pushing and riding your bike, is that you basically are shining a flashlight into all the crevices of your brain. You really get to know yourself, and there's no secrets anymore. Like, all your dark spots, and what makes you, tick, what makes you crazy, what makes you happy. And it really just kind of puts all those things in line and kind of resets your priorities.
Yeah, really, really well said. I mean, I couldn't have said it that any better. It's exactly how I feel when I'm out there. I mean, it's that self-sufficiency, yet so simplistic. It's that we have such busy, crazy lives, and we have a bunch of junk in our garage, our house, and everything is going on a daily basis, and we get used to this grind. But you throw a few things on your bike or on your back, and you go out there in the middle of nowhere, and you're self-sufficient for a few days, and it just everything changes. Like you said, you're grounded, and you couldn't have said it any better. So good job.
It's very purifying. It's just a very purifying experience, and that's one reason why I recommend, not necessarily bikepacking, but anything that gets you out there and gets you into some new territory, maybe makes you feel a little small and scared and a little bit challenged, but down inside you feel good, like you because in those situations, if you did your preparation and your homework and things aren't just incredibly awful weather-wise, you've got it. You've got what you need, and it also brings what I think is an important thing that I think we forget in everyday life, is that humans are capable of so much more than just going to work and paying bills, and I think that we don't get that far away from it living in Colorado, because we're surrounded by such amazing athletes and people just pulling off just amazing things. You're just like, whoa, and I get a lot of inspiration from that. And I think that it's really important for people to not pigeonhole themselves into thinking they can't do something. Because, like I don't know how to put this in words, but like, I am not like a super fit Olympian athlete by any means. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fairly fit. I'm fairly strong, I know how to train, but like really it comes down to grit and determination, is really one of the most important things in these races. I beat people who are far more fit and far more prepared and have far better equipment than me, because I know what I can do. And And I think it's really important for people not to basically shoot their dreams down because they don't feel like they're capable of doing it. Because I think that most people are capable of really, really, really great things, and it's just a matter of really just wanting it and creating the situation where it can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our logo for our show is, it has the mountains, but in the middle of it says "Find your adventure, enlarge your life." We totally believe in that. I mean, what you just described is exactly why we started this show. It doesn't matter what your adventure is. I mean, it could be Everest, or it could be the tiniest little adventure. But if it takes you outside your comfort zone and you get that feeling of setting out and accomplishing it, and you realize that you have the power to do that, it just starts stair-stepping from then on. I mean, once you realize you can do the small thing, you try the next thing, and it is so fulfilling. And you're right, we're not meant to be stuck in tiny cubicles tapping away on keyboards. We're meant to be out exploring this beautiful world that we're on. So, man, thanks for helping me inspire people to do it.
And I think that we really are all capable of that, And actually, I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day, and he was saying, it's a little bit out there, but like basically saying that, like, he's like, man, even like the fattest person you've ever seen, like their genes, they survived the last ice age, man. Like inside of them is like a really tough Neanderthal that can handle it, And it was like, oh, interesting.
Good point.
I mean, it really is true. I mean, I really think that we, and I'm guilty of it and I'm still guilty of it, but I was definitely guilty of it for a really long time. And that I was like, the tour divide is a good example. Like, I was like, whoa, when I first heard about it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then for like 7 years, I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I made up a list of excuses why I couldn't do it. And then one day I did it, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. And like, it really was just the most amazing experience, because I never thought it was actually going to happen. And when it did, it just felt so amazing and such a powerful release. And it was like, I felt like I was just like floating 6 feet above my head, because the whole time I just felt so high on how amazing it was to be out there living my dream. And I just think it's just sad that people don't allow themselves that, it's not like every day of my life is like that by any means. I have my everyday life is going to work and walking dogs and making food and doing dishes and vacuuming the floor, just like everybody else. But
real person,
you have, yeah, right. But if you have that, at least in your head, like it really can help ground you in those situations where you're just kind of like, I just want to tell my boss, stick it, and I'm going home, or instead you're like, think about it, like there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, and it's not happening right now, but this is empowering that to happen. And just not letting go of that dream, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Well said. Well, and it helps you get through things. There are tough times in life that if you're of the mind that you can conquer things like this, things you thought you never could, if you've conquered one of these things, then you can address the hard times in life and look at them and say, you know what, this is kind of going to suck, except I did that. I think I can probably make it through this. It's a psychological thing.
Yeah, it's that building that confidence of knowing that you can handle situations, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I want to talk a little bit about fat biking. I saw on your blog, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, you've been doing some fat biking. So I got to be honest, when fat biking really kind of took off this year, mainstream. And, I see people on the dry trail in the summer coming by on a fat bike, and I look and I think, okay, I get it. Everybody's got their thing, but I don't get it. It doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. Right. However, being out riding this past weekend with my son up in the foothills, we encountered some snow, and we got through it just fine, except when I was on that snow, it finally clicked. I'm like, that's where it made sense in the snow. And to be able to get out there and ride in the winter, even when you have snow on the ground, with a packed trail, you can go out and have I say almost, but I imagine just as much fun as you do in the summer, because you finally got a tire that can float on that surface. So tell me a little bit about that. Sell me on fat biking. And maybe what we ought to do is explain what fat biking is, because I'm not sure. I mean, we have a varied audience, and not everybody's into mountain biking.
I think it's kind of interesting how fat biking kind of exploded a couple of years ago. And I think it's almost a thing where people are like more captivated by the look of them than necessarily the function. Because I mean, really all a fat bike is a mountain bike that's evolved to ride on snow. Like in places like Minnesota and Alaska, they've been doing this for like 20 years, where they were like literally like
it was necessary
welding two regular mountain bike rims together to get a little bit more of a footprint. Like they were making their own stuff.
Really?
And what we're seeing is that there was enough interest in that kind of stuff that the industry actually started making stuff for it, whereas people weren't just making it in their own garages. And when there's a full-blown manufacturing going on, all of a sudden it's way more available, way more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing that explosion of accessibility. But like you said, a lot of people are using them riding on dirt, just riding like a regular bike, which is, whatever. It's just whatever floats your boat, kind of like you said. But for me, it's just like, I've done a lot of cross-country skiing, and I still like cross-country skiing, but I got a little burnt out on it. And we have pretty long winters here in Gunnison. And, being an endurance cyclist, you need to keep on your bike at least a little bit. And usually that means riding the trainer in the winter. And you do enough of that and you start to hate your trainer.
Yeah, right.
Which is basically where I'm at right now, is I have a really hard time riding the trainer. But I love for me, a lot of getting exercise is being outside. So the trainer just doesn't facilitate that. And the fat bike does. And for me, it's just basically just about riding my bike. And it's basically a bike adapted to ride on snow. And I think it's funny how some people are really rubbed the wrong way by it and all that kind of stuff. And like, I have friends who are like, but I like skiing. And I'm like, I think skiing's great. I'm not dissing skiing, Like,
I'm glad you like skiing. Stay off my fat bike trail.
Like, well, no, I mean, I think it's all good, Like, I mean, I think that human-powered activity, I think, is just a fantastic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we should, as recreationalists, I think that we should stop picking fights with each other and start working together more, so that we don't lose access altogether. And
here.
Because the differences are just so small, and I think it's funny how quick we are to be like, oh man, that guy, he's a dork, he's on a fat bike, and when really it's just like, yeah, the guy's on a bike, he's having fun,
right?
And same thing with like someone's running. I think that's great, and I hate that some people like to pick on other users to the point of basically creating an animosity between the user groups. And I think that's really unfortunate a lot of times, because a lot of times we're out there for the exact same reasons. We're just using a different mode of transportation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's
like I said, I still ski. I love skiing. But I love riding my fat bike too. So.
Right. Well, it's like, don't knock it till you try it, and that's what I hadn't judged fat bikes as a dumb idea. I just thought I don't see the attraction to it until I was out there on snow, and I thought, okay, duh, you're being short-sighted there, guy. This is where it makes the difference. And
I will say that riding, like, whether it be groomed or packed or whatever, if it's like, firm, single track, is absolutely phenomenally fun. I mean, we have a little bit of groomed single track around here, and it's just so flippin' fun to ride. It really is. Like, and I've gone on some group rides with a bunch of people, and I've done a lot of group rides in my life, and we did a group ride probably like a month or so ago, and everybody was giggling. Like, we had a 65-year-old guy, a 50-year-old guy. We had racers in the group. We had all kinds of different levels of riders. Everybody was giggling and having fun. And I can't think of a regular mountain bike ride that I've been on where you have 6 or 7 people of different abilities who are all having fun. Because usually it's like the racers are like, can we go a little bit faster?
Right,
and so people are like, can we take a longer break? I don't even get to stop, And it was just like, to me, it was just a really good sign that, like, it really is just fun. And it gets people out there and gets people giggling and having fun. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I get it now. I bet the fat bike on snow it's a big equalizer, because you're not going to go bombing down a single track trail like you would with dry, grippy dirt. There are certain limitations that you're going to have.
You get pretty close.
Do you?
If it's packed enough, you can go pretty fast, but you never go fast uphill. It's definitely slower.
Yeah, right.
But like I said, it maybe just feels like it's fast.
Well, and just to
But yeah,
explain to some of the listeners not sure what a fat bike looks like if you haven't seen one, it's essentially a mountain bike where the front forks and the rear chainstays are wider enough to accept a larger tire. So basically the tire is, what is it, like 4 inches probably? 4 or 5 inches?
4 to 5.
Yeah.
4 to 5 inches is kind of the new standard, yeah. And it literally is just, they call it the snowshoe effect, where it's literally you're just trying to increase the tire footprint so that you're getting enough float that you don't sink through the snow.
Yeah, more surface area.
Yep.
So,
yep, exactly.
It completely makes sense. I wanted to talk to you about that because I wanted to tell you my story about not understanding what the whole thing was until literally this past Sunday.
No worries.
Well, I think what's cool is, I live just north of Boulder, and we have Lyons up here is a little town right in the foothills before you go up to Estes Park. And I just recently learned that Redstone Cyclery, I don't have any affiliation with them. They're not an advertiser or anything, but I will give them a shout out because I think this is cool. What they do is they will loan you snowshoes for free if you'll go hike the trails that they want you to hike, because they're having people pack down. Yeah, they're having it packed down for the fat bikers who are their customer and they're supporting. So they get people to go out there and hike the trails. If you're going to go do the hike, as long as you hike the ones that they want you to do that need packing down, you get free snowshoe rentals. But they're also supporting these guys, which is an amazing opportunity for both sides. I think it's a great thing that they do.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, get more people out.
Absolutely. All right, so let's wrap it up by, I want to talk about your blog a little bit. I don't think you have any reason to promote your blog. It's not like you do advertising or take advertising or make money on it, but I was really interested because you've kept up with it. I think it's an awesome read for those who listen to our show that want some of this inspiration, just to kind of read through and be inspired to do some of this stuff. So your blog is jwookie1.com. It's JWOOKIE. ONE.com, and you've been doing it since, it looks like, early 2013.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of point it out. I don't know what drives you to keep writing like that. I think a lot of people will start blogs and just kind of fall off and think, that sounded like a great idea when I began, but it seems like you really keep up with it.
I try to. I definitely have lapses where I don't write as often as I should. And it's definitely something where I don't just write a blog post just to like put something out there. I usually have something I need to say when I write a blog post. So it's not just because I have to. The biggest thing for me with the blog, it's a really good question because it's something that I'd wanted to do for a really long time, because I felt like I guess that sometimes endurance and ultra racing feels somewhat selfish. Because you're kind of putting yourself first. You're worrying about your food, and you're saving money, and you're training, and you're traveling. It's all about you. Like it's a lot of self involvement. And I guess for me, writing the blog was kind of a way of feeling better about everything I was doing and trying to share some inspiration. Because I feel like I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of other people, and not necessarily from reading their blogs, but sometimes reading blogs, but just getting that little spark of something that kind of changes when you're having a bad day and you're kind of grumpy and you're not sure why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes it just takes a little spark of something to kind of switch your mind over and think about something else and to get inspired. And I kind of just wanted to pay that back because, like I said, a lot of people have inspired me and helped me through a lot of dark times and helped me keep going when I've kind of lost focus. So for me, it was just about sharing that and giving that energy back and hopefully trying to inspire somebody else to do something. Because like we've been saying, I think that people getting out and enjoying the world is a really important part of what humans are supposed to be doing. And I'm just trying to kind of pay that forward and kind of get people inspired to get out there and feel what those experiences can do for you. Because I really do feel like they've kind of changed my life. Like the Colorado Trail and the Tour Divide. These experiences really, 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 really have changed my life and really made me appreciate being alive. And, made me look forward to giving more to the world. And I just kind of want to play that forward and hopefully inspire someone else to do something. And if I do, then fantastic. Then I would be so stoked if I inspire somebody else. So.
Well, you're doing a good job with it, and that's why I wanted to call it out. And I know you weren't looking to do that, but it's for the same reason we do the show. I think that what people can get off your blog is inspiration. If you want to get inspired and read a little bit more about, I imagine everything that you've done, bike touring and endurance racing, bike packing, all that stuff is on there. So I would point people over to jwookie1.com. Go check out his blog.
And I also encourage people to ask questions in the comments on the blog posts too. I get quite a bit of feedback from people asking me questions, and I really do enjoy taking the time to give people little pointers that kind of help them feel a little more confident about getting out there. So if anybody's out there who wants to check out my blog and has questions, feel free to leave questions in the comments. I'd be happy to give you my 2 cents.
Awesome. Yeah. What a resource, man. 4-time winner of the Colorado Trail Race and 2014 winner of the Tour Divide. You can't get a better person to tap into. So guys, definitely go visit his blog and use him as a resource. I appreciate that.
Heck yeah. Make use of it. Absolutely. It's free.
Yeah. That's a good thing. Did you want to give a shout out to where you work at all? I don't know if they help you with any sponsorships or anything.
I work at Rock and Roll Sports in Gunnison, and they definitely support me in what I do, and we support a lot of people in what they do too. We're a bike, ski, and climbing shop, so we like to give people gear that gets them out there doing the cool stuff for sure.
Nice. All right, guys. So if you're in Gunnison, Colorado, and you want to go do some mountain biking, or if you need a mountain bike repaired, go check out Jefe and Rock and Roll Sports in Gunnison. So. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time. That was an awesome hour. And like I said, I didn't get to hardly any of my questions, but I think the information you gave me and the listeners has been awesome, and it was a blast to talk to you. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. No, that's fantastic. I'm really stoked to help.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, take care, and we'll be keeping an eye out for you in the next CTR.
Well, it might be next year, but we'll see.
All right. Well, either way, we'll watch. All right, awesome. Jefe. Man, it's good talking to you.
Thank you.
Night.
You too.
All right.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.